The great hall of the Sereth court was unlike anything a human had ever seen. The walls rose high into the shadows, lined with carvings that told the story of battles won and empires built. Tall pillars shaped like twisting vines of stone reached to the ceiling, glowing faintly with the light of embedded crystals. At the far end, a throne of silver and black steel rested on a platform. Upon it sat the Sereth Queen, ruler of one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. Mark walked slowly between rows of alien nobles. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him. The Sereth were tall and slender, their skin marked with shifting colors that showed their emotions. Some showed shades of green, meaning suspicion. Others glowed red, meaning anger. None of them looked pleased. Humans were still new in galactic politics, and many aliens saw them as reckless. Mark was dressed in a plain dark uniform with the emblem of Earth's fleet on his chest. He kept his head high, even though his heart pounded. He had been chosen as envoy to the Sereth, sent to show that humans could be trusted allies. He knew this was the most important day of his life. The court fell quiet as the queen raised her hand. Her presence filled the room. She was taller than any of her people, her form wrapped in flowing garments of silver that shimmered as she moved. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried across the chamber with a weight that made even the nobles bow. "Human envoy," she said, "you stand before the Sereth throne. Speak, and let us see what worth your kind carries." Mark bowed slightly. "I come to represent humanity. We seek not conquest but friendship. We wish to stand among the stars as partners, not intruders." Whispers spread through the court. Some nobles laughed softly, others shook their heads. The queen watched him with no change in expression. Then, to Mark's surprise, she rose from her throne. "I will introduce you to my heir," she said. "Let the child of the throne see this new voice among the stars." From behind the throne came a small figure. The Sereth child looked no older than 6 in human years, though their kind grew differently. The child's skin glowed with a soft blue light, showing innocence and calm. The young heir's eyes were wide as they looked at Mark. The court leaned forward, curious to see how the child would react. Many Sereth believed that children could sense truth more clearly than adults. If the heir showed fear or anger, it would prove the human was unworthy. Mark knelt slightly, lowering himself so he would not appear threatening. He gave a gentle smile. "Hello," he said softly, unsure if the child understood human speech. The hall grew silent. The child tilted their head, studying Mark. Then, in a clear voice, the child spoke a single word. "Father." The sound echoed through the chamber. The nobles gasped. Some stood in shock, their colors flashing in disbelief. The queen froze, her sharp eyes fixed on Mark. Mark himself was stunned. He blinked, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" he whispered. The child stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "Father," the child repeated, louder this time. The hall erupted. Voices rose in chaos. Nobles shouted accusations. Some claimed it was a trick. Others cried that it was an insult. The Sereth guards moved forward, ready to pull the child away. The queen raised her hand again, and silence returned at once. Her gaze burned into Mark. "Explain this," she commanded. "Why does my child name you so?" Mark shook his head quickly. "I swear I do not know. I have never met the child before. I did nothing to cause this." The child refused to release his hand. Their small fingers clung tightly, glowing softly as if comforted by his touch. Mark looked down at the young face, and for a moment he forgot the court and the queen. The innocence in the child's eyes was pure, untouched by politics. The queen's voice cut through his thoughts. If you are lying, human, it will be the last lie you ever speak in this hall. I am not lying, Mark said firmly. He straightened, still holding the child's hand. I cannot control what the child said. I am as surprised as you. The queen studied him in silence. The court waited, every noble watching. The colors of their skins shifted wildly, showing their confusion. Never before had a Sereth heir spoken such a word to an outsider. At last, the queen spoke again. Very well. The court will not decide today. But hear me, human. You will remain in the city. You will be watched. You will be tested. If this is a trick, it will be uncovered. If it is not, then we shall see what fate intends. She turned to the nobles. Let none here spread chaos. The child's word is not yet judgment. It is a question, and it will be answered. Reluctantly, the nobles bowed and stepped back. But the whispers did not stop. The sound of their voices filled the hall as they stared at the human who had just been called father by the heir of their empire. Mark lowered his eyes and breathed slowly. He had faced battles in space, but nothing had prepared him for this. He knew one thing clearly. Whatever path lay ahead, his life and the life of humanity had just changed forever. The child tugged on his hand gently and smiled up at him, repeating the word once more. Father. And once again, silence fell over the court. The Sereth court did not forget what had happened. After the child of the queen called Mark father, the nobles whispered like a storm that would not end. The great hall echoed with their voices even after the queen had left her throne. Some nobles accused humans of using tricks. Others said the child was too young to understand. A few, however, whispered that perhaps destiny itself had spoken through the air. Mark was escorted out of the hall by 2 guards. The queen's child still clung to his hand, refusing to let go. The guards tried to separate them, but the child glared with a stubborn look and would not release him. In the end, the queen herself allowed the child to walk with Mark until they reached the royal chambers. Only then did the heir let go, smiling softly before being taken inside by attendants. Mark was placed in a guest chamber under watch. The room was large, with walls of stone and crystal, but it felt more like a prison than a gift. Guards stood outside the door, and he knew every move he made was being recorded. He sat on the edge of the bed, thinking about what had happened. His mind went over the words again and again. Why had the child called him father? He had never been here before, never met the queen or her heir. There was no explanation. He feared that no matter what truth he spoke, the Sereth nobles would not believe him. That night, the queen summoned her council. The nobles filled a long chamber with sharp voices. Their colors glowed in anger and fear. This cannot be accepted, said one noble, her skin flashing crimson. The human must have used hidden devices to plant the word in the child's mind. Impossible, another argued, glowing in orange. The ancient wards of the throne hall prevent such things. No machine, no spell, no trick could pass. Then the child is confused, said a third noble. Remove the human at once before the empire is shamed. The queen listened in silence as they argued. Finally, she raised her hand. At once, the voices fell quiet. The child is mine, she said. The heir of the throne spoke a word that shook this court. We will not dismiss it with excuses. We will test the human. If he speaks lies, the truth will be shown. If he speaks truth, then we must decide what fate demands. The nobles bowed, though many were not pleased. The queen ended the council and walked alone through her halls. In her heart, she carried a storm of questions. Her heir had never spoken such a word before. The child had never clung to anyone but her. Yet the moment the human appeared, everything changed. She wondered if the stars themselves had guided this moment. The next day, Mark was taken to the court once more. The great hall was filled again, but this time the mood was darker. Nobles lined the sides, their eyes sharp and filled with suspicion. The queen sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. Beside her stood the child, calm and smiling as if unaware of the tension in the air. Mark bowed. "Your Majesty, I do not know why your child spoke that word. But I swear I have no plan, no trick, no device. I came here only to speak for humanity." Before he could say more, a noble stepped forward. "He must be tested," the noble declared. "Let the ancient machines search his mind. If he hides lies, we will see them. If he is false, he will be cast out." Many voices agreed. The queen nodded. "So it shall be. Human, you will submit to the trial of truth." Mark's heart beat faster. He did not know what kind of test this would be, but he had no choice. "I will submit," he said firmly. The guards led him to the center of the hall. Strange machines of crystal and steel were brought forward. They glowed with light, humming with power. The queen explained their purpose. "These devices reach into the mind. They do not change what is there. They only show what is true. If you lie, the crystals will burn. If you speak truth, they will remain calm." Mark took a deep breath and stepped into the circle. The machines surrounded him. Bright lines of light touched his skin, and he felt as if something was brushing through his thoughts. It was not painful, but it was heavy, as if unseen hands searched through his memories. "Speak," the queen commanded. "I do not know why your child called me father," Mark said. "I have never met the heir before yesterday. I have no plan to claim your throne. I came here only to represent my people in peace." The machines glowed softly. The crystals pulsed in calm blue light. No fire, no warning. The nobles shifted uneasily. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Do you carry devices from your people to control minds?" "No," Mark answered. "We humans have no such power. We cannot force words into the mouth of a child. We cannot force loyalty into the heart of anyone." Again, the machines remained calm. Whispers filled the hall. Some nobles looked troubled. Others still glared, refusing to believe. But the machines could not be denied. They had spoken the truth of the humans' words. The queen turned to her court. "You see. No lies rest in his mind. And yet, the heir will not release him. The child speaks a word that no Seraph heir has ever spoken to an outsider. We will not dismiss this. We will watch. We will judge not only his words but his actions." The child suddenly stepped forward, breaking the circle of guards, and took Mark's hand once more. Their small fingers held his tightly, and they looked up at him with shining eyes. "Father," they said again. The hall was silent. Mark's throat tightened. He looked down at the child, unsure of what to say. He wanted to protest again, but he saw the innocence in their gaze. This was not trickery. The child truly believed the word. The queen rose from her throne. Her voice carried power. "So be it. Until the truth is revealed, this human will remain under my watch. He will stay in the royal city. He will be tested in many ways. If fate has chosen him, then we will see why. If not, then he will answer for every word. The nobles bowed, though their colors still burned with doubt. Mark bowed as well. He did not know what trials awaited him. But he knew one thing with certainty. His life was no longer his own. The eyes of an empire were fixed on him, and the word of a child had tied his fate to theirs. The guards led him back to his chamber. Once again, the child tried to follow, but the queen stopped them gently. The heir cried out, reaching for Mark, and only after long moments did they return to their mother's side. Mark looked back once before the doors closed. He felt the weight of the court, the queen, and the entire Seraph Empire pressing upon him. His path was no longer that of a simple envoy. He had stepped into a story greater than himself, and there was no turning back. Mark woke early in the chamber the Seraph had given him. The first light of the alien sun came through tall windows carved with patterns of stars. He sat on the edge of the bed, his mind heavy with worry. He knew the Seraph nobles still doubted him. The queen herself had not decided what to do. Every step he took was being watched, every word he spoke weighed carefully. A guard entered the room and bowed stiffly. The queen commands your presence. Today you face the trial of truth. Mark rose to his feet. He followed the guard through long halls lined with shining crystals. Everywhere he went, Seraph eyes followed him. Servants, soldiers, and nobles looked at him with suspicion. Some whispered as he passed. Others turned their faces away. The hall of trials was deep beneath the palace. The air was cool, and the floor shone with silver lines shaped like circles and runes. At the center stood a large ring of glowing crystals. Within it, pillars rose, each one filled with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Around the ring stood the queen, the nobles, and the royal seers, who were known for reading truth from the soul. The queen spoke first. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. Human, yesterday the ancient machines showed no lies in your words. Yet suspicion remains. Today you will stand before the seers. They will look deeper. They will see not only what you say but what you truly believe. Mark stepped into the circle. He felt a pressure on his chest, as if the air itself had grown heavier. The seers moved closer, their robes trailing along the floor. Their eyes glowed faintly, and strange symbols shimmered across their skin. Begin, the queen ordered. One of the seers spoke, their voice low and deep. Do you claim the heir as your own blood? No, Mark said firmly. I am not the child's father. I did not come here to claim the throne. I came only as envoy. The pillars flashed once and then calmed. The seers nodded slowly. Another seer stepped forward. Do you wish harm to the queen or to the Seraph Empire? Mark straightened his back. No, I wish no harm. Humanity seeks peace and friendship, not destruction. The crystals glowed blue. The nobles shifted uneasily. A third seer spoke. Do you know why the heir calls you father? Mark hesitated. This was the question he feared most. His answer was the same as before, but he knew how impossible it sounded. I do not know. I cannot explain it. I swear it is not my doing. The seers closed their eyes. The crystals shone softly, showing calm. The nobles whispered again. Some still looked doubtful, but the machines and seers could not be denied. Then something unexpected happened. The queen's child, who had been standing beside her throne, suddenly ran into the circle. The guards tried to stop the heir, but the child slipped past them and rushed straight to Mark. The small hands reached for his own, holding tightly. "Father," the child said happily, as if the whole hall was not watching. Gasps filled the chamber. The seers looked at each other in silence. The nobles burst into new arguments, their colors flashing in anger and fear. Some cried that it was proof of trickery. Others whispered that perhaps it was fate itself. The queen raised her hand, and the voices fell still. Her face was unreadable as she looked at her heir holding the human's hand. "You see, council," she said. "The machines reveal no lies. The seers find no deceit. The child clings to him as if guided by destiny. Will you deny what all of us see?" Still, some nobles protested. "This is dangerous. If the people hear that the heir calls a human father, it will shake the empire. It will weaken your rule." The queen's voice grew sharp. "Or it will strengthen it. Perhaps the stars have chosen this moment. Perhaps the bond between human and seraph is written in ways we do not yet understand." Mark remained silent, though his heart raced. He looked down at the child, who smiled up at him with complete trust. He felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He had not asked for this, yet something deep inside told him that the child's words carried meaning beyond what anyone understood. The queen stood. "The human will not be executed, nor cast out. He will remain under my watch. He will face more trials, not of machines, but of action. If his heart is true, it will be shown not only in words but in deeds." The nobles had no choice but to bow to her decision. Their colors burned with frustration, but none dared argue further. After the trial, Mark was escorted back to his chamber. Yet once again, the heir refused to leave him. The queen allowed the child to walk with him through the halls. Many seraphs stopped to stare as the small heir held the human's hand without fear. For the first time, some of their colors showed curiosity instead of anger. Inside the chamber, Mark sat with the child. He spoke softly, teaching a simple human game with small stones from the table. The child laughed as they copied his moves. The sound was warm and filled the room with life. The guards at the door exchanged glances. Even they could not deny that something unusual was happening. Later that evening, when the queen came to take the child back, she stood silently for a long moment, watching. Mark rose respectfully, expecting anger, but instead the queen's gaze held something else. Perhaps not trust, but not hatred either. "You are still watched, human," she said firmly. "Do not mistake the child's word for safety. The court waits for you to fail. Remember that." Mark bowed. "I understand." The queen nodded once, then turned to her heir. "Come." The child frowned, not wanting to leave, but obeyed at last. Before going, they looked back at Mark and whispered once more, "Father." When the door closed, Mark sat alone in the quiet room. He thought about the tests, the whispers of the nobles, and the weight of the queen's words. He had come as envoy, but now he was bound to something far greater. He looked out of the tall window at the stars above the seraph capital. He did not know what awaited him, but he knew he could not step back. The child's trust was now his burden, and perhaps his chance to change the fate of two worlds. The seraph palace stood tall above the capital city. Its towers of crystal and steel caught the sunlight, shining like fire across the skies. Inside those halls, however, shadows of doubt and ambition began to grow. The queen's decision to keep Mark under her watch had not ended the whispers. It had only shifted them into darker corners. Many nobles believed the human was dangerous, a symbol that could weaken their empire. Others feared that if the people heard the heir called him father, the Seraph throne would lose respect. In a chamber lit by green fire, several nobles gathered in secret. Among them was Lord Vyar, a tall seraph with sharp eyes and a voice that carried like a blade. His skin flickered between red and black, showing both anger and resolve. "This cannot continue," he said. "The Queen allows the human to stay. She claims fate may guide this bond. But if the child grows attached, if the people believe the heir has chosen a human father, what then? Our empire will be laughed at by the stars." Others nodded. "The Queen grows blind," one noble added. "She risks all we have built. If we do not act, humanity will sink roots into our throne." Lord Vyar leaned closer to them. "Then we must make the court see the danger. We must force the Queen to cast the human out. If she refuses, then we will take matters into our own hands." While plots grew in hidden rooms, Mark tried to live each day under the watch of the Seraph. Guards followed him wherever he went. Nobles stared at him in every corridor. But none of this mattered to the Queen's child, who sought his company whenever possible. One morning, Mark was taken to the palace gardens. The Queen had allowed the heir to walk there, and the child insisted he come along. The gardens were vast, filled with glowing flowers and trees that shimmered with energy. Strange birds with silver wings flew above, singing soft notes. Mark and the child sat near a fountain shaped like a serpent of stone. The water flowed with light instead of liquid, and the child clapped with delight at the glow. Mark smiled, placing small stones on the ground again, teaching the child another game from Earth. "You always smile when you play," the child said in their soft voice. Mark nodded. "Games remind us of joy. Even when things are hard, joy gives us strength." The child tilted their head. "Then you will play with me always, father." Mark's chest tightened at the word. He wanted to correct the child again, to remind them that he was not their father. But the way the small voice spoke it, filled with trust, made him pause. He only nodded. "Yes. I will play whenever I can." From a distance, nobles watched. Some whispered that the bond between the human and the heir was growing too strong. Others were silent, unsettled by the ease with which the child smiled in his presence. Later that day, Mark was summoned to the Queen's private chamber. She sat near a wide window, looking out at the city below. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "You spend much time with my child," she said. Mark bowed. "The heir seeks me. I do not push them to follow. They choose it themselves." "That is true," the Queen said softly. "But the court grows restless. Some nobles see danger. They whisper against you. You must understand the weight of this." "I do," Mark answered. "But I cannot turn the child away. They trust me. I cannot betray that trust." The Queen studied him for a long moment. At last she spoke. "You are honest. The seers and machines proved that. Yet honesty alone does not protect you. Know this, human, if you harm the heir, even in thought, you will not live to regret it." Mark met her gaze. "I will never harm your child. That I swear." For the first time, the Queen's expression softened slightly. She nodded and dismissed him. That night, in the council hall, Lord Vyar stepped forward with fire in his voice. "Your Majesty, this cannot be allowed. Already the people whisper of the human. They say the heir calls him father. If this spreads, your rule will be weakened. Cast him out before it is too late." The Queen remained calm. "The human has shown no lies, no trickery. The heir chose this word, not him. Shall I punish a man for the trust of a child? Vr's skin flashed red. Then allow him to be tested further. Place him in trial of action. If he fails, none can doubt his unworthiness. The queen thought in silence. Finally she nodded. So be it. He shall face trials not of words but of deeds. Then we shall know. The nobles agreed, though their colors still burned with distrust. When Mark was told of this decision, he felt the weight press down harder. More trials meant more danger. Yet he accepted it. If my actions can show who I am, then I will face them. What he did not know was that Vr and his allies planned to twist those trials. They would not allow him to succeed easily. In the shadows, they whispered of traps and dangers, schemes that would force the human to stumble. The first sign of their plotting came 2 nights later. As Mark walked through a quiet corridor with 2 guards, a blade of energy shot from the dark. The guards leapt forward, blocking it just in time. The attacker fled into the shadows, leaving no trace but a burn on the wall. The queen was furious when she heard. She called her council and demanded to know who dared to strike in her palace. None confessed, though many eyes avoided her gaze. Mark stood silently before her throne, still shaken. He knew the attack had not been random. Someone wanted him gone. Someone feared what the child's trust might bring. The queen's gaze was like steel. You see, human. My court is divided. You have become more than an envoy. You are now a test for the empire itself. Remember this as you face what lies ahead. Mark bowed deeply. I will not run from it. If I must prove myself, I will. The queen's child rushed forward, slipping past the guards, and hugged his arm. Father will win, the heir said proudly, looking up with complete faith. The queen said nothing. But in her eyes there was a spark of something new, something that even the shadows of her court could not hide. The palace of the Seraph was still heavy with whispers and hidden anger when the first alarms rang across the city. A deep sound echoed through every tower and hall, shaking even the stones of the throne room. The nobles rose from their seats in panic, their colors flashing bright red and yellow. A guard rushed into the chamber, bowing before the queen. Your Majesty, enemy ships have entered the system. They move toward the throne world. It is the Creel. The name alone filled the court with dread. The Creel were a brutal species that lived by conquest. They destroyed worlds, taking whatever resources they wished and leaving only ashes. The Seraph had fought them before, but never so close to their home. The queen rose from her throne, her voice strong. Prepare the fleet. No enemy shall breach our skies. The nobles hurried out, calling orders to their soldiers. Mark stood at the side, his heart racing. He had heard of the Creel from human records. They were merciless and clever, striking with overwhelming force. If they reached the surface, the city would fall. The queen turned to her guards. Take my heir to safety. But the child refused, running to Mark and clutching his hand tightly. Father, do not leave. Mark knelt down, meeting the child's wide eyes. You must be brave. Stay with your mother. I will not leave, but I must help. The child shook their head, but the guards gently carried them back to the queen's side. Moments later, Mark was taken to the war hall, where great screens showed the space above the throne world. Dozens of Seraph ships rose from their docks, their sleek forms glowing with power. Beyond them, the dark shapes of the Creel fleet appeared, sharp and jagged like blades in the sky. The Seraph commanders shouted orders, their colors flashing with stress. Form the shield line. Hold the orbit. Mark studied the screens. The Creel ships moved in patterns he had seen before, not random but carefully planned. They would press against the Seraph line until it broke, then strike deep where the defense was weakest. He stepped forward. If you fight them in a straight line, you will lose. They want you to hold steady so they can surround you. A commander glared at him. Silence, human. You know nothing of our wars. Mark did not back away. I know how they fight. Humanity has studied them. We faced raids before. Listen to me. Break your line. Draw them in, then strike from the sides. The nobles murmured in anger. He seeks to command our fleet, one shouted. But the queen raised her hand. Enough. Let him speak. If his knowledge fails, it is his shame. If it succeeds, it is our salvation. The commanders hesitated, but they obeyed. The queen's word was law. The Seraph fleet shifted into a new formation, not a wall but a curve, bending like a trap. The Creel charged forward, certain they could crush the defenders. But as they pressed in, the Seraph ships split, pulling them deeper into the curve. Human ships, small but fast, joined from the flanks, striking at weak points. Explosions lit the sky. The Creel's front ranks broke apart as fire came from both sides. What was meant to be an easy strike turned into chaos. In the war hall, the nobles gasped. The queen's eyes narrowed as she watched the humans' plan unfold. The Seraph held strong, their losses far fewer than expected. Mark leaned forward, pointing to the screens. Now. Push from the center. Drive them back before they regroup. The order was given. The Seraph ships surged forward, their weapons blazing. The Creel line shattered, and the enemy began to retreat. The skies above the throne world filled with wreckage as the invaders fled into the dark. When the last enemy ship vanished, the hall erupted with voices. Some nobles shouted praise, while others still glared in silence, unwilling to admit the human had saved them. The queen rose. The throne world stands because of this man's counsel. Let no one deny it. Mark bowed his head. I only shared what I knew. Your warriors did the rest. The queen's heir ran into the hall, breaking free from the guards. The child threw their arms around Mark, smiling with joy. Father saved us. The hall fell silent again. The word echoed louder than the sound of victory. Some nobles looked away in shame, for they could not deny what they had seen. Others muttered darkly, still bound by pride. Lord Vyar stepped forward, his colors burning with anger. Do not be fooled. One lucky plan does not prove his worth. He is still an outsider. The heir is still misled. But the queen's voice cut through him like a blade. Enough. Today the human showed courage and wisdom. He stood when others only doubted. Whether you accept it or not, he has earned his place here. Vyar bowed stiffly but his eyes glowed with fury. He would not let go of his plans so easily. Later, as the sun set over the city, Mark stood on a balcony, looking at the horizon. The battle was won, but he knew more trials would come. The Seraph nobles were divided. Some would never accept him, no matter what he did. The queen joined him, her presence heavy but calm. She looked at the sky where the last light of battle faded. You changed the course of this day. I will not forget it. But know this, human. You are now part of something far greater than you wished. The eyes of the Empire are upon you. Mark nodded. I understand. I will not turn away. From behind, the child's voice rose again, Soft but sure. Father will never turn away. The Queen looked at her heir and then at Mark. For the first time, her eyes held not only suspicion but a flicker of respect. The night came, and the city sang songs of victory. But in the shadows, Lord Vr whispered to his allies, his voice filled with venom. The Queen may trust him, but I do not. We will find a way to end this before the human becomes more than a voice. Before he becomes a part of the throne itself. The night after the Creel fleet was driven back, the Sereth palace was filled with tension. Many nobles whispered in corners, their pride wounded by the human who had led the defense. Lord Vr, in particular, seethed with anger. He refused to accept that a human could earn respect from the Queen, much less from her heir. But outside, the stars were quiet for only a short time. Intelligence reports showed the Creel had gathered another fleet. This time, they were larger, faster, and more determined. Their goal was clear: destroy the Sereth capital and claim the throne world. The Queen called for an emergency council. The war hall was alive with the hum of ships preparing, the glow of weapons powering up, and the tension of commanders giving orders. Mark stood near the Queen, calm but alert. The child had been brought to a safe chamber nearby, but they had insisted on waving to him before leaving. You will lead this battle, the Queen said. Her voice was steady, carrying authority that silenced all doubts in the room. Your counsel yesterday saved this world. Today, your actions will decide the fate of my people. Mark bowed. I will do my best. The fleet moved into orbit around the throne world. Thousands of Sereth ships stretched across the skies, their weapons ready. But the Creel were ruthless, and they advanced like shadows, their jagged shapes moving through space with deadly precision. Mark studied the formations carefully. They will attack in waves, he said. Their front lines are meant to absorb, while the center strikes at the weak points. We cannot hold steady. We must divide them and attack from unexpected angles. The Sereth commanders hesitated. Some still distrusted the human, but the Queen's presence left no room for argument. Orders were given to reshape the fleet. Ships split and curved, creating patterns the Creel had never faced. Small, fast human ships joined the flanks, ready to strike at weak points. The first wave of Creel ships hit the line with fire and energy. Explosions lit the darkness of space as shields absorbed impact. Yet the enemy thought they were winning. They had never faced tactics like this, and they did not know the human mind had planned it. Now! Mark shouted. The Sereth ships surged forward in coordinated strikes. The Creel were drawn into a trap. Fire came from both sides, hitting their flanks and pushing them into confusion. The human ships darted like lightning, striking where the Creel were weakest. The Queen watched from the command platform, her eyes sharp. For the first time, some nobles began to see the value of his strategies. The battle was turning, not through sheer force, but through clever planning, adaptability, and courage. Even Lord Vr could not hide his surprise. His skin flashed bright red and black as he realized the truth: the human's plan worked. The Sereth were winning. Hours passed in tense combat. The Creel regrouped, but every move Mark predicted. With calm and precision, he guided the Sereth fleet, anticipating every strike and counter. Slowly, the invaders began to retreat, their formations breaking apart under the relentless pressure. Inside the palace, the Queen's child had been watching from a secure window. Their small hands clutched the frame, eyes wide with excitement. Father will win, they whispered, their voice full of trust. Mark, despite the chaos of space combat, thought of the child. That trust gave him strength. Every decision he made, every order he gave, was guided not by fear but by responsibility. He was not just defending a world. He was defending a bond, a promise of hope between two species. The final wave of Creel ships approached. They were the strongest, the fastest, and the most dangerous. Many Seraph ships were damaged, but retreat was not an option. Mark called for a combined strike, coordinating Seraph and human forces. The attack was precise, a perfect storm that hit the Creel from all sides. Explosions filled the skies, and the enemy's ships were thrown into disarray. One by one, they fled into the darkness, leaving behind wreckage and smoke. The Seraph fleet held strong, victorious. The war hall erupted with cheers and cries of relief. Many nobles rushed to congratulate the commanders, but the Queen's eyes found Mark first. She stepped forward, her expression unreadable, yet her presence carried respect. "You have done what few could," she said. "You saved the throne world. You have earned your place here, not by words, but by deeds." Mark bowed, though his heart was still racing. "I only guided them. Your warriors fought bravely." The child ran forward, slipping past the guards to embrace him. "Father," they cried, smiling with complete joy. The court fell silent once more. This time, it was a silence of awe, respect, and wonder. The nobles could not deny what they had witnessed. The human had led them, protected them, and won against an enemy they had feared for generations. Lord Vyar stepped forward, his face dark with anger, but even he could not speak against the victory. The fleet had been saved, the throne world defended, and the human had proven himself beyond any doubt. The Queen looked at Mark, her gaze steady. "Let it be known," she said, her voice echoing through the hall, "that humanity stands beside the Seraph not as strangers, but as allies. Today, courage and wisdom came from a human hand, and the Empire survives because of it." Mark felt the weight of the moment. He had come as an envoy, untested and watched. Now he stood as a protector, trusted by the Queen and honored by the people. The child hugged him once more. "Father," they said softly, and for the first time, Mark allowed himself to accept the word. It was no longer strange or impossible. It was real. The Queen nodded, her eyes meeting his. "You have proven more than skill. You have shown heart, courage, and honor. That is what binds us together." Outside, the city celebrated the victory. The Seraph people sang songs of triumph, and even the nobles who had doubted Mark could not ignore what had been done. Humanity had shown its strength not by conquest, but by intelligence, bravery, and loyalty. In the quiet moments after the battle, Mark stood once more on the balcony, looking at the stars. The child's words echoed in his mind. "Father." He smiled, understanding the meaning. It was a bond of trust, of protection, and of hope. A bond that now connected two worlds. And for the first time, Mark realized that this was only the beginning. The Seraph court was unusually still that morning. The throne hall, normally alive with whispers and arguments, held a quiet tension. Every noble, every soldier, every attendant waited for the Queen's word. The great battle against the Creel had ended, but the question remained, how would the court now judge the human who had led them to victory? Mark entered the hall, accompanied by the child. Their small hand clung to his, and their glow of excitement and innocence contrasted with the stern faces of the Seraph nobles. Mark kept his head high. He had faced enemy fleets, cunning commanders, and suspicion from the court itself. Today, he would face their judgment. The Queen sat on her throne, her presence as commanding as ever. Her gaze swept the room, and every eye followed her as she rose. "Today, we gather to judge more than actions in battle," she said. "We judge the bond that has grown between a human and my heir. We judge courage, honor, and the meaning of trust." A murmur went through the court. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably, still uncertain. Lord Vyar's skin flickered red and black, a clear sign of his anger and frustration. Yet even he remained silent, unwilling to oppose the queen directly after all that had happened. "You, human," the queen continued, her eyes fixed on Mark, "have proven yourself not only with words, not only with plans, but with deeds. You faced the Creel when many would have faltered. You protected my city and my people, showing wisdom and courage." Mark bowed deeply. "I only acted to help, Your Majesty. I did what I could to save lives. The Seraph warriors fought bravely. I was only their guide." The queen nodded. "And yet, your guidance made all the difference. That is what we honor. The child of the throne, who called you father, did so not out of trickery, but out of instinct and trust. That instinct was right." The child stepped forward, looking up at Mark with wide eyes. "Father," they said simply, repeating the word with complete certainty. The court fell silent. The word, once shocking, now carried a new weight. Nobles who had doubted Mark could not deny the bond they saw. The child's trust was clear, unshakable, and genuine. The queen looked at her council. "Let it be known that this bond, forged through courage and care, is a matter of the heart as well as the mind. We do not dismiss it, nor do we punish it. We accept it. Humanity stands beside the Seraph not as strangers, but as partners. And this man, Mark, has earned respect in our court, in our empire, and in the eyes of my heir." Gasps and murmurs filled the hall. Some nobles bowed deeply, acknowledging the truth they had refused to see. Others remained stiff with pride, but even they could not deny what had been accomplished. Lord Vyar finally spoke, his voice low and harsh. "Your Majesty, this human may have aided the fleet, but he is still an outsider. The people may never accept him fully." The queen's eyes locked on him, sharp as steel. "Do not underestimate the eyes of the people, Lord Vyar. Today, they witnessed courage, wisdom, and honor. Humanity has shown that it is capable of more than you imagined. If you do not accept this, you will find yourself out of step with history." Vyar bowed stiffly, silencing his words. Pride would not let him agree openly, but the queen's words left no room for further argument. The child tugged on Mark's hand gently, reminding everyone in the hall that the bond between them was real and sincere. "Father," they said again, with a soft smile. Mark knelt beside the child, holding their small hands in his own. "I will protect you," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "I will honor the trust you have placed in me." The queen observed the moment in silence. She had ruled for decades and seen many challenges, but never had she witnessed a bond like this. Not a bond of blood, but a bond of loyalty, courage, and heart. Turning to the court, she raised her hand. "Let it be proclaimed that humanity is no longer merely a distant species in our eyes. They have proven their worth. And this man, Mark, is honored by the Seraph court and recognized by the heir of the throne. From this day forward, humans and Seraph shall stand together, as allies, as partners, and as friends." Cheers and applause rose from many in the hall. The nobles who had been doubtful now could see clearly the proof of Mark's courage and wisdom. Even those who had secretly opposed him were forced to bow to the truth. Mark stood, bowing to the queen once more, and then he looked at the child. Their glow filled the room like a warm light, and their small hand in his reminded him of why he had fought so hard. "You will always have my protection," he said. The queen approached and placed her hand lightly on the child's shoulder. "This bond is now recognized and protected by the Empire. Let no one challenge it. The human is a part of our story, and the heir has chosen wisely." The child's smile widened. "Father," they whispered again, holding tightly to Mark's hand. Outside the throne hall, the city celebrated. The people of the Seraph saw the fleets return, victorious and unharmed. Word spread quickly of the human who had led them to safety, and the child who had chosen him as father. Humanity, once overlooked, was now honored and respected. Mark walked through the palace gardens later, the child skipping ahead of him, pointing out flowers and glowing trees. The war was over. The court had accepted him. And most importantly, the bond between human and Seraph heir was real, recognized, and respected. Even Lord Vyar could not hide his acknowledgement. Though his pride burned, he knew the Empire had been saved and that Mark's courage had changed the course of history. The queen watched from her balcony, her gaze distant but thoughtful. "Perhaps," she said softly, "this is the beginning of a new era. One where trust and courage guide us more than fear and suspicion. One where humanity can stand as equals among the stars." Mark looked at the child, and for the first time, he allowed himself to smile without hesitation. "We have much to learn from each other," he said. "And much to protect." The child laughed, a sound full of hope and joy. "Father will teach me everything," they said proudly. Mark took their hand, feeling a deep sense of purpose. "And I will learn from you," he replied. "Together, we will face whatever comes next." The court had spoken, the fleets had returned victorious, and the heir had chosen. Humanity, through one man's courage, had proven its worth. The stars above glowed bright with possibility, and the Seraph Empire would never forget the day a human stood with them and earned the trust of a queen's child. And in that silence, filled not with fear but with respect, the court finally understood, some bonds were stronger than blood. Some trust was earned through courage, honor, and heart. And the word father, spoken by a child, had changed the course of the galaxy forever.